welcome to Talking Kootenay Books. My name is Keith Powell. I'm your host, and today our guest is Joey Ambrosi. Joey, we usually really focus on talking to Kootenay-based authors, but we've expanded our focus this time and invited you over, even though you live in the Crow's Nest Pass, because the book we're going to talk about today encompasses both the Kootenays and the Crow's Nest Pass, the Rockies. So the book I'm referring to is Fishing in the Canadian Rockies. Congratulations on the new book. Can you just tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. And first I would like to say that I consider myself a Kootenay boy. Okay. I was born and raised in Invermere and went to David Thompson Secondary School.
So you got strong roots?
I got strong. My mother still lives there. I was there today visiting her. Okay. And on my way back to Crow's Nest, and Crow's Nest, as you know, butts up against East Kootenay anyway. So right. I consider myself a East Kootenay boy. The fishing book is kind of evolved. In 1986 I did a fishing book. Mm-hmm. In 2001, I did a fishing book, and it was quite a substantial one then. It was the first edition of Fishing in the Canadian Rockies. And over time, since then, I had lots of people say, are you going to write another one? You're going to write another one? And I was like, no, I'm not really going to. And then I thought about it about 4 years ago, and I decided, yes, I'm going to do it. So in 2018, I went to about 400 lakes. Again, a lot of them, you can do 25 lakes in a day when you drive by. And then in 2019, I did about 300 more lakes, and I did a big update. And I sent out chapters out to a number of publishers. And I sent out about 10, and within a week I had 7 of them calling me. So I kind of took the first one, which was Hancock House out of Vancouver, and they're the ones who end up publishing the book. So it was kind of neat that it kind of went along that way.
Well, congratulations, like I said, and it's a pretty impressive book. I'm not exactly sure how many destinations you've got in there. Do you have an idea?
Yeah, it covers basically every lake and stream all the way from the American border up to the north end of Jasper Park, both sides of the mountain, about 1,100 streams and lakes. And I should say I've been to about 90% of them. Okay. Haven't caught fish in every one, but I've caught fish in most of them. So it covers a wide area, half in BC, half in Alberta.
How many pages in the book?
I believe it's 248 pages. It's divided into little chapters, so it doesn't come quite as far as Cranbrook, but it definitely got the Flathead, the Fernie, Sparwood, Elkford, going all the way up to Invermere, Briscoe, and Parson up in that area. Those are all lakes that I fished when I was a kid. Okay. My mom and dad, we went fishing every weekend, and a lot of lakes like White Swan and Whitetail Lake and a lot of those, Premier Lake, did lots and lots of those. And later, I did lots of backpacking through the Rockies. I've done over 22,000 kilometers of trails in the Canadian Rockies, so I've been on virtually every trail. It's funny because some lakes you can hit 25 lakes in one day if you want to just drive by them, and there's others that take 4 days to hike into one lake, so it's quite a variety.
What's the core audience? Who's going to really enjoy this book?
I think any fisherman, anybody who fishes at all, especially people who are not sure where to go or what's in that lake or how should I fish that lake. It's a really good descriptor. If you're just driving up by Invermere somewhere and you got the book and you say, hey, we'll go up to Lake Lillian, there's some rainbow trout in there. So I think anybody who's a fisherman will get value out of the book. Okay.
Do you make a recommendation or do you just present the information?
I present the information. I have a little section that says whether there's good number of fish in it, or there's some fish or no fish, and then I put a little mark. There's a little A inside a little green box that said they're author's favorites. So each chapter in the book has 2, maybe 3 lakes that are my personal favorites in the book.
So let's just talk about that for a moment. You've got some favorites within the book throughout the region. Any that come to mind? Some of your favorite fishing destinations?
Yeah, and I should first say that when you do research, I have to tell my wife I'm going to do research is what I'm going to do, so she knows where I'm going.
I'll have to use that next time I go fishing.
There you go, going to do some research. Yeah, there's lots of wonderful lakes in the East Kootenays, up and down the Rocky Mountain Trench. Some of my personal favorites are Whitetail Lake down by Canal Flats is a wonderful one. I really like the lakes west of Briscoe, north of Radium Hot Springs. Lots of small lakes. Those are the lakes that I grew up on. Lots of those. Premier Lake, White Swan Lake, all wonderful ones. And then lots in the national parks. My favorites were always going to backcountry lakes. That I do river fish, but not that much. My thing was always to go for a hike, 5, 10, 15 kilometers, maybe an overnight, maybe not. Go into a lake, see if there's fish there, see if you can catch some fish and come out. And my favorite spot in the entire Rockies, so I'll give that away to everybody, is Mount Assiniboine National Park, which is in British Columbia. It's sort of east of Invermere, west of Banff, and it's about a 30-kilometer hike in. Doesn't matter which way you go. There's 4 different routes, and they're all 30 kilometers. Nowadays, you can go in by helicopter, which I've done the last couple times, but I've been in there about 40 times, and some wonderful fishing in there. Just my favorite spot in the world. I've been all over the world, and that's my favorite spot on this planet.
Well, in addition to good fishing, the scenery is pretty spectacular as well.
Absolutely. You can't go wrong up there. Catching a fish on underneath a beautiful mountain anytime.
So I've seen your previous book on fishing that you've done, and I have to say that your new book is a substantial upgrade. You've really put some nice finishing touches into that. Can you just describe a little bit how the new book maybe just takes that up one step and gives the fisher that person a bit more of a perspective as to what is available?
Sure. It starts back in about 1986. I did a fishing book that was published by Rocky Mountain Books out of Calgary, and they published the book, and it went well. It was called Fly Fishing the Canadian Rockies. It wasn't quite as extensive as this one. It was more mountain parks, but it did cover some of the stuff in the trench. And then in 2001, I did a self-published book. So the problem with that for me is that you have to become the salesman and the transportation guy and do everything. And I like writing books, I like doing the research, but I'm not the salesman type, but I still had to go around and deliver books and do all that kind of stuff. So when I did and of course it's a cost thing. You have to keep the cost down if you're publishing it yourself. And I just printed it, I had it printed in Lethbridge. And this other one with Hancock House, they want to do a higher end book. I knew it was going to be all color even before they got it. I had already had the layout done and all the maps. So they were quite impressed with everything there. And they looked overseas to do it. I believe they ended up going to China to get it printed because they could get the cost down. And the funny story on that was the book was ready to go at the end of 2019, probably early 2020. And then COVID hit, so there's no bookstores buying any books. There's nobody, no fishing stores are buying any books. Everybody's closed, so they didn't want to print it then. So they were going to do it in 2021. And when that came around, then there's a big queue of books that weren't printed in 2020. So it was the end of 2021. And then there was a problem getting it out of China on a boat, and it got over to Vancouver, and the containers got put on shore, and everybody knows all the supply chain problems. And it sat there for about another 8 weeks, and I know the publisher, I give him a call and say, what's up? And he said, well, I called the container people, and they just kind of yell at me and say, you'll get it when you get it. And so that was about 8 weeks later. Then it sort of came out actually in beginning of 2022, probably about February, so when it started to hit the bookstore shelves.
Oh, good. Well, your patience has paid off because the book looks great. So I just wanted to talk about one feature within the book. You've got a tremendous selection of maps. Now, how did that all come about?
In university, I took some cartography courses, so I'm a map maker. All the books I've done, hiking and fishing, I've done all the maps myself. The good thing now is with Google Earth and Google Maps, you can use those as the underlay and make everything very, very accurate. Where the old day I had to kind of look at things and draw things. So the 2001 version, the maps were good. You could find a lake, but it was all black and white, so a road didn't look a whole bunch different than a lake. So the new ones, with the color, at least the streams are blue, the lakes are blue, and the roads are brown, and, and like that, so it's much easier for somebody to find everything. And every lake is on a map. I know in the past I've read many fishing articles and stuff where people tell you a great story about where they caught a fish, but they don't actually tell you where they caught the fish. And I end up knowing where it is most of the time, but I didn't want to leave anything off. If it's in the book, it's on a map.
Okay, good. What's the reaction been to the book?
Very good, very good. I know the sales have been very good so far, and people that I've talked to just love the book. They're really happy that I've done another one.
Right. So do you ever feel guilty about giving away all the fishing secrets?
Well, it's actually funny because I get heck from some of my friends around Invermere say, you gave away all our secrets. I said, I didn't give away anything. I just said where everything is. I didn't say which one is the secret lake. So they're all in there, but I don't necessarily say which is the secret. So to me, I want to see people get out there and fish. And it was nice to see during COVID that lakes that I would go to, there'd be 2 or 3 cars or 5 people before COVID. During COVID, there's 25 cars and 50 people fishing, and that didn't bother me at all. Yeah. Same as on the hiking trails. I love to see people out using stuff. So that's what I want out of this, is so somebody can take their kid fishing and they know that there's going to be a fish in this lake.
Certainly opens the door for a lot of people. Gets them out exploring the great outdoors.
Absolutely, that's what it's all about. I actually worked in Crow's Nest Pass for a Japanese school for about 10 years. I was the outdoor education instructor. And we had Japanese kids come over from Tokyo, and they were just blown away by the Rocky Mountains, of course. Mm-hmm. And it gave me a new perspective. I was looking at it through their eyes. Some old mountain that we look at every day, and they were just amazed by it. And that kind of rejuvenated me in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And all of those kids, that was 10 years, and so 25 kids a year. Every kid caught a fish. So that was pretty exciting for them and for me to get them out there.
Good. I know you did a little bit of publicity tour earlier in the spring, went around and talked to the media and so forth. Is that part of the mandate that you have personally, or is that something your publisher wants you to do?
It was kind of neither. So it's kind of odd, and I've had some books published before, but this one, I knew that the publisher is out of Vancouver. They're very good on the West Coast, and they've done fishing books, but they don't have a lot of connections in the Rocky Mountains, especially with the fishing industry. Mm-hmm. So they have connections with the Chapters and the Kohl's and all the bookstores. They have lots of connections, but they didn't have connections with the fishing stores. So I talked to my publisher and I said, I'm willing to go on a road trip that started from Crow's Nest Pass and went Calgary, Edmonton, Jasper, Invermere, Cranbrook, Fernie, everywhere I could think of, to all of the places that I had sold books before 20 years ago. So there was a lot of people I hadn't seen for a long time. Mm-hmm. People who owned the bookstores were very happy to see me and happy that there was a new book. So I took it on my own. And it happened to be just at the price of the gas was at the absolute highest. And driving my truck was a long way around. And I didn't expect it from my publisher, but they gave me a little bit of money to cover the cost of gas, which was very nice. So there was no intention on that, but I stopped at all the newspapers in each of the places, and there's been a story that's come out everywhere, including Cranbrook.
Oh, good. Yeah, so that publicity never hurts, and it's really good when an author takes that initiative and gets out and actually promotes their own products. So good for you. I know when it comes to publishing, you've self-published. You now are working with a publishing house or company. Mm-hmm. Let's just talk a little bit about that experience. Sure. What maybe can you pass on to other potential authors about working with a publisher?
Sure. I'll go back to 1980. Well, my first book was in 1984. It was called Hiking Alberta Southwest. Mm-hmm. And for 3 years previous to that, I worked for the Sierra Club of Southern Alberta. And I was the only person who worked on the project for 3 years. And what we did is we hiked historic trails that the Palliser expedition went over. And it was a pretty neat project to go out there. And some of these trails are normal hiking trails. Some of them aren't. Some of them mm-hmm. are kind of lost to time. So it was great to go back and write up the stories. And then we decided in the second year that we're going to do a book. So for the next 2 summers, we went out with crews and we hiked all over and people took notes. And I was the only person who was part of the thing for 3 years, so the Sierra Club said they would put my name on the front of the book, and I was the one who wrote it up and did the maps and everything. So I think I was worthy of it, but it was really neat when the book came out. It was published by Douglas and McIntyre in Vancouver, and it was neat to see a book. So 2 years later, I did the fishing book, Fly Fishing the Canadian Rockies, and I just sent out again stuff to. I would suggest that you send out your introduction and a chapter that looks good, you're happy with. Send it out to a number of publishers. If they're interested, they will get back to you. Mm-hmm. And then part of it all comes down to money, I guess, because basically a publisher gives you 10% of the cover price. Mm-hmm. And they said even Pierre Burton, that's all he ever got was 10% of the cover price. The person who sells the book, if it's a bookstore, they get 40% of the price, mm-hmm. and the publisher gets 50% of the price. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, I thought in 2001, well, I'll be the publisher, so I'll put up the money up front, and I'll get the 10% for being the author, and I'll get the 50% for being the publisher. But the publisher has to do a lot of stuff. They have to sell the books, they have to either mail them, or they have to drive around Alberta and BC and deliver them. Yeah. So after that, I thought, I think I'll go back to a publisher again. I don't get as much money, but there's no headaches. And it's worthwhile to send it out. You'll find out sometimes they'll say, well, we're interested, but not right now. Mm. Or I haven't had anywhere they didn't say they were interested. So I think it's worthwhile. The backup step is you can publish yourself. Nowadays, it's easy to publish yourself.
Right. So when you're actually working with the publisher, how much input do you have in the way the book is put together and designed and so forth?
Well, I did all the layout for this latest book, Fishing the Canadian Rockies, and they were quite happy with it. They had someone go through the editing just once to catch any little typos. There was a few, not a whole bunch, but we corrected those. But I feel that I had the final control on anything. Right. If there was pictures changed, because when we didn't publish the book in 2021, I went out and did more hiking and more fishing and got new pictures, and I would just send a picture to the publisher and say, can you change the picture on page 132 to this one? And they were very good about that. So I seem to have the control because I did the layout. I think you can do it another way. You could send your script and your pictures, and they do the layout. And it actually ended up, because I did all the maps, I negotiated with the publisher that they would pay me money. I said, you would have had to go get somebody to make all these maps. Since I did them, can you just give me a little bonus on top of that? And they were fine with that. So they were very good people to work with. I think most publishers are. They want a good product in the end. They can see how much work has gone into something. And if there's something that needed to be changed, I think, and the index got put in different format than what I had and things like that. But they were very good with dealing with me.
Good. Well, thanks, Joey. I really appreciate your insight because, you know, we often get those kind of questions. What is it like to work with a publisher and so forth? So you give us some valuable tips there. You also published a hiking book, and it's a guide to the Southern Rockies. It came out when?
2011.
Okay, so can you just tell us a little bit about that hiking book?
Sure, that's the third hiking book. I mentioned the first one, Hiking South Alberta Southwest. And then I work at the Frank Slide Interpretive Center just across the border in Crow's Nest Pass in Alberta. And in 1998, I was working as a contract interpreter there, and I said, I had this information from this first book. If I write it up, would you guys be interested in selling? So they paid me through my job to do a few more hikes and put it all together. And that 1998 we did one, and then in 2011 it is second one, which is the Southern Rockies Trail Guide. And again, that was done through the Frank Slide Interpretive Center. So I got paid my regular salary, and it'd be a Wednesday afternoon I'd go do a hike just to confirm a few things. And they printed it and published it. So the Frank Slide Interpretive Center gets all the money from it, so I don't get any money. But it was nice to be able to do that.
Right. Pretty extensive book as well. How many hikes in there?
I think about 175 in that range. And again, that covers southern Alberta from Waterton, West Castle, Pincher Creek, Crow's Nest, up Livingston Range, all the way up to Chain Lakes. And on the Alberta side, Sparwood, Fernie, Elkford, Bull River, kind of out in that area, and down the Flathead as well.
BC side.
Yeah, on the BC side,
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay. So I know when putting together a guidebook or a trail guide, how much research actually goes into that? Are you ever worried that you have to make sure that everything is so accurate?
I can tell you absolutely that the minute you print a fishing guide or a hiking guide, it's out of date. The minute it comes into your thing. Fishing guides, there's lakes that get winter killed in a season, or the fisheries put new fish in a kind of lake. Things change all the time. Hiking guides, a logging road goes in another 2 kilometers up a valley, so the trailhead is no longer what you say, and it goes further up. So everything is out of, so you pick the time you're going to print it, and you say, I'm happy with it at this point in time, and it goes out. Both of these were a lifetime of work. Obviously, the fishing guide, there's a lot more trail coverage in that. But all those years, I was just out hiking. I wasn't taking notes, doing anything. And then when it got close to doing a book, I said, well, if I do this little valley and those 3 lakes and do a little bit of this and fill in the gaps, I could do a book on that. And then one of the strange things you'll find about the fishing book, all the years I've been fishing and doing everything, I've never taken a note. I'm like Rain Man when it comes to fish. I can tell you what fish I caught and what I caught on 25 years ago. So it's very, very strange that way. But if you get the BC stocking records and the Alberta stocking records, you know if they're putting fish in what lake. So on updating, I talked to lots of fishermen, but you can also get lots of records. But I never took any notes any of the years for any of those.
Well, you've done a good job, and it reads really well. I noticed in the foreword where you were introducing the book, I think you mentioned 20,000 kilometers of hiking? 22,000
kilometers, yeah.
So that's a lot of mileage.
And I also think I say in there, that the hikes are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And probably over the last 20 years, other than with my son who's now 27, I don't hike with anybody. I'll go on a 3 or 4 or 5 day hike by myself somewhere out there, and it's so now they just get shorter and shorter.
So if I count right, you've got like 6 books, 3 about hiking, 3 about fishing over a course of 20 years or more.
Yep.
Tell me what turned you on to the outdoors. Why do you think it's important to tell that story about all these adventures?
I think it's what I enjoy. I know that with things like with my son, of course I always want my son to be a fisherman. I want my son to be a backpacker. I want him to do all those things. But you can't force those things on people. So I learned a long time ago with my son, if you show them why you love something, that's all you need to know. If they know why you love it, they're probably a little bit interested in it, and it might become a passion of theirs. So I care about what I like to do. I like to fish. I like to hike. I like to travel the world. There's lots of things I like to do. But from that, I'm a fairly outgoing person. When I see somebody at a lake, I'll talk to them. If they've never been there, I'll give them some of my flies so they go catch a fish. It's, as I said, with those Japanese kids, 250 of them never caught a fish in their life. It was pretty exciting for all of them. So I want people to go out there and enjoy the outdoors. We live in the most wonderful place on the planet, right here in these Kootenays. So I want people to be able to enjoy that and enjoy it more than they would have without the book, perhaps.
Right. Let's just talk a little bit more about your roots. So you grew up in Invermere, and that's sort of right in the prime of the Canadian Rockies as well. So what did your family do to sort of inspire the fact that you became such an outdoor person?
We went, as long as my memory doesn't fail me, what I remember from being a little kid, we went camping every weekend, or fishing at least every weekend, summer camping every weekend. So I was in the outdoors. So you just learn to be out there, and not always fishing, just running around in the woods doing something. It was just great to be there. I went to University of Calgary for many years. I have a bachelor's degree in history and a master's degree in history and a master's degree in urban and regional planning in cultural tourism. So I'm in a good place in the Frank Slide Center. But there, every weekend in the fall, I would go backpacking in Banff Park and Kananaskis or Jasper. So that's why I learned that side of things, and later moved to Crow's Nest, so that had that side of things. So it was just one of my passions is the outdoors.
Oh, good. I just want to ask you a little bit, Joey. Some of these areas are really pristine and special, and I just get the feeling that maybe we're loving some of them to death. How do you sort of balance that out?
I think there should be opportunity for people to know about them. I know there's some lakes there where I say there's very few fish. If you catch fish, you got to put it back. There won't be any fish. But I don't think just by saying, for example, Mount Assiniboine Park, that's the most special place on the planet, I don't think everybody in East Kootenays is going to hike 30 kilometers in to go to a place like that. So some of those places are protected by their distance from everything. There's other ones, even in terms of fishing, what we call put and take lakes, that there's lakes that the fisheries society put in lots of fish because they want people to fish and take lots of fish out of it. So those campgrounds all have set limits on how many people can be there. So I think we're doing a better job than maybe a few years ago, where it was just random camping and things got destroyed and people would chop down all the wood at the campsite. And so I think provincial parks, picnic areas, forestry, campsites, I think they're doing a lot better job than they used to. And as more open up, then the really crowded ones, people kind of spread out to other ones as well.
Right. So maybe a bit more better managed now.
Yeah, I think a lot better managed than it used to be.
Yeah, well, when it comes to fishing and exploring the outdoors and so forth, we have a whole new generation of people that maybe have never gone outdoors.
Right.
And do you feel good about introducing them to the outdoors?
Absolutely. And it's strange. Everything goes in cycles. Doesn't matter what it is. But I know up until the sort of mid-'70s, there wasn't a lot of backpacking because you had to carry a canvas tent and probably a cast iron frying pan, and I went through a little bit of that in my early backpacking days. Then nylon tents came out and aluminum stuff, so you could get farther and do more things in the backcountry. So the 70s till about the mid-'80s was a boom time for people in the backcountry. It was really was. And then the 90s, it kind of dropped off for 10 or 15 years, and you'd go, and there wouldn't be that many people. Now there's a boom again, and I don't know what it is, but people are everywhere in the backcountry, and I love it. I love it. Wherever I go, there's people all over the place.
So we talked about your favorite fishing spot. How about your favorite hiking trail?
That's Mount Assiniboine as well.
Okay.
And there's 4 different main trails in, and I've been in and out all of those, and there's about 5 or 6 other little sneaky trails that you can go in. I've been on all those. That's my beating heart is Mount Assiniboine.
Good. What's the future hold for you, Joey?
Close to retirement, and next year. My wife and I love to travel. We've been all over the world, and we got a few trips.
Any other publishing plans?
Not immediately. Again, being from the Invermere area, I have lots of information on the history. There was a lady there who ran the newspaper in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and I knew her fairly well. She gave me a whole bunch of her files. And I would like to do a history of the Invermere area. There's never been a sort of a definitive one done of the Invermere area, so that's a kind of a retirement plan there. Plus, I'm planning on doing a new version of the hiking book for next year.
Okay. So you're keeping busy.
I'm a busy man. Always busy.
Good. Joey Ambrosi, thank you for being our guest on Talking Kootenay Books. The book Fishing in the Canadian Rockies is your newest book, and it can be found at local bookstores throughout the region, right?
The part of being not the publisher is I don't know exactly where they've sent it. I believe if you go to Mountain Man Sports or St. Mary's Angler, if they don't have it, they can get it. You can get it online at hancockhouse.com, that they have a website that you can get it there as well. But through the Kootenays, I know up in Invermere, it's in a number of places, in Fernie, and it's around.
Good. And we know that you're out there promoting it, so good for you.
Thank you very much.
This is Talking Kootenay Books, and my name is Keith Powell.